The rain fell hard on the old stone steps. Maria sat there getting wet. She did not move. Her small hands held a torn photograph close to her chest. The picture showed a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. It was the only thing Maria had left of her mother. A lady in a blue coat stood next to her. The lady had papers in her hand. Her voice was soft but sad when she spoke. "Maria, you cannot stay here anymore. Your grandmother is gone now. There is no one else to take care of you." Maria looked up at the tall building in front of her. The sign above the door said St. Catherine's Home for Children. She had heard about this place before. It was where children went when they had no family left. "Will I see Grandma again?" Maria asked. Her voice was so quiet that the lady had to bend down to hear her. The lady's eyes became watery. "No, sweetheart. Grandma has gone to heaven, but you will be safe here. There are other children here too. You will not be alone." But Maria already felt alone. She had felt alone since her mother died 2 years ago. Even living with Grandma, she felt like something was missing. Now Grandma was gone too, and the empty feeling in her chest grew bigger. The lady took Maria's hand and led her up the steps. The heavy wooden door opened with a loud creak. Inside, the building smelled like old wood and cleaning soap. The walls were painted yellow, but the paint was old and peeling in some places. A woman in a gray dress came to meet them. She had gray hair tied back tight and wore small glasses. Her face looked tired. "This is Mrs. Patterson," the lady in the blue coat said. "She will take care of you now." Mrs. Patterson looked down at Maria. "Hello, child. Welcome to St. Catherine's. You must be tired from your long day." Maria nodded but did not speak. She was tired, but not the kind of tired that sleep could fix. She was tired in her heart. The lady in the blue coat gave Maria a small bag with her few clothes inside. "Be good, Maria. I will come check on you soon." Then she was gone, walking back into the rain. Mrs. Patterson led Maria down a long hallway. Their footsteps echoed on the hard floor. They passed many doors, and Maria could hear voices behind some of them. Children laughing, crying, and talking. "The other children are having dinner now," Mrs. Patterson explained. "You can meet them tomorrow. Tonight you just need to rest." They stopped at a door with the number 7 painted on it. Mrs. Patterson opened it and turned on the light. The room was big, with 20 small beds lined up in rows. Each bed had a thin blanket and a small pillow. Most of the beds looked empty, but Maria could see some had clothes or toys on them. "This will be your bed," Mrs. Patterson said, pointing to a bed near the window. "You can put your things in this box underneath." Maria walked to the bed and sat down. The mattress was hard, and the blanket felt rough against her skin. She looked out the window and could see the rain still falling. The drops ran down the glass like tears. Mrs. Patterson brought her a plate of food. There was bread, some soup, and a cup of milk. "Eat something, child. You need your strength." Maria took a few small bites, but the food had no taste to her. Everything felt strange and cold. Mrs. Patterson watched her for a moment, then left to check on other children. Alone in the big room, Maria lay down on her new bed. She pulled out the photograph of her mother and held it close. In the picture, her mother was young and beautiful. She was wearing a white dress and smiling at the camera. "Mama," Maria whispered to the picture, "why did you have to go away? Why? Did Grandma have to go too?" The photograph did not answer. It never did. But Maria kept talking to it anyway. "I do not understand why this happened to me. Other children have families. They have mothers and fathers who love them. They have homes, with warm kitchens and soft beds. Why do I have nothing?" Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Maria had always been afraid of thunder, but Grandma used to hold her during storms. Now there was no one to hold her. As the night grew darker, other children began coming into the room. They were different ages, from very small to almost grown up. Some talked quietly to each other. Others just went straight to their beds. A girl about Maria's age looked over at her. "Are you new?" she asked. Maria nodded. I am Sarah. I have been here for 6 months. Where did you come from? My grandmother's house, Maria said quietly. Where are your parents? They are dead. Sarah's face became sad. Mine too. That is why we are here. Other children listened to their conversation. A boy named Peter said, My parents left me here 3 years ago. They said they would come back, but they never did. A smaller girl named Lucy added, I do not remember my parents at all. I have always lived here. As Maria listened to their stories, she realized that every child in this room had lost something important. They had all been left behind or forgotten. But somehow they seemed to have found ways to keep going. When the lights went out, the room became very dark. Maria could hear other children breathing, some snoring softly, others moving restlessly in their beds. She felt surrounded by people, but still completely alone. She closed her eyes and thought about her grandmother's small house. She remembered the smell of bread baking in the oven. She remembered sitting on Grandma's lap while they read books together. She remembered the songs Grandma would sing to help her fall asleep. Now all of those things were gone forever. God, Maria whispered into the darkness. It was the first time she had tried to pray since her mother died. I do not understand why. You took everyone away from me. Mama said you love all children, but I do not feel loved. I feel forgotten. She waited for an answer, but the only sounds were the rain against the window and the quiet breathing of the other children. Please, she continued, if you are really there, please do not let me be alone forever. Please let someone want me someday. The thunder came again, louder this time. Maria pulled the thin blanket over her head and held her mother's photograph, tight against her heart. Tomorrow would be her first full day in this new place. She would have to learn new rules, meet new people, and try to find her place among all these other forgotten children. But tonight, she just wanted to remember what it felt like to be loved. Even if it hurt to remember, it was better than feeling nothing at all. As sleep finally came, Maria dreamed of her mother's voice singing lullabies and her grandmother's gentle hand stroking her hair. In her dreams, she was not alone. In her dreams, she was still someone's precious little girl. But morning would come, and with it the reality of her new life as just another orphan child in a building full of other lost souls. 3 years had passed since Maria first walked through the doors of St. Catherine's. She was 10 years old now, but she still felt like the scared 7-year-old who had sat crying on those stone steps. The morning bell rang at 6 o'clock every day. Maria always woke up before the bell. She liked the quiet moments when she could look out the window and watch the sun come up. It was the only time she felt peaceful. Maria, come eat breakfast, Sarah called from across the room. Sarah was 13 now and had become like a big sister to some of the younger children. But Maria always kept her distance from everyone. In the dining hall, children sat at long wooden tables. The younger ones talked and laughed loudly. The older ones sat quietly thinking about their own problems. Maria always sat at the end of a table by herself. Mrs. Patterson walked between the tables, making sure everyone had enough food. She stopped next to Maria's chair. Maria, why do you not sit with the other children your age? She asked. Maria looked down at her bowl of oatmeal. I like sitting here. It is not good for a child to be alone so much. You need friends. I do not need anyone, Maria said quietly. Mrs. Patterson sighed and moved on to the next table. She had tried many times to help Maria make friends, but the girl seemed to have built a wall around herself. After breakfast, the children went to the schoolroom. St. Catherine's had its own small school with 2 teachers. Maria was the best student in her class, but she never raised her hand to answer questions. She just did her work quietly and perfectly. Miss Kelly, the younger teacher, often tried to get Maria to speak up. Maria, you solved that math problem very well. Can you show the other children how you did it? Maria shook her head. I do not want to. Miss Kelly looked concerned. Maria, you are very smart. You should be proud of your work. But Maria did not feel proud. She felt empty. What was the point of being smart if no one cared about her? What was the point of doing well in school if she had nowhere to go when she grew up? During lunchtime, the children played in the yard behind the building. Some played games like tag or jump rope. Others sat in groups and talked. Maria always found a quiet corner where she could sit alone with a book. She loved to read because books took her away from her real life. In books, children had adventures and found treasures and lived happily ever after. In books, orphan children always found families who loved them. One day, a boy named Tommy came over to where Maria was sitting. "What are you reading?" he asked. Maria showed him the cover. It was a story about a girl who found a magical garden. "That looks boring," Tommy said. "Do you want to play with us? We are playing a game where we pretend to be pirates." "No, thank you," Maria said, not looking up from her book. "You never play with anyone. Are you sick or something?" Maria finally looked at him. "I'd just like to read. But do you not get lonely?" The question surprised Maria. She was always lonely, but she had never thought about whether other people could see it. "I am fine," she lied. Tommy stood there for a moment longer, then ran back to his friends. Maria watched him go and felt a small pain in her chest. Part of her wanted to run after him and ask if she could still join their game, but the bigger part of her was too afraid. What if they did not really want her to play? What if they were just being nice? What if she tried to be their friend and they left her anyway, like everyone else had left her? It was easier to be alone. It hurt less. In the evenings, after dinner and study time, the children had free time before bed. Most of them gathered in the common room to watch television or play board games. Maria usually went to the library corner and read more books. Sometimes, she would listen to the other children talking and laughing. A girl named Amy would tell funny stories about things that happened to her before she came to St. Catherine's. A boy named David was good at drawing and would show his pictures to anyone who wanted to see them. Maria wished she had stories to tell or talents to share. But her life before the orphanage felt too sad to talk about, and she did not think she was good at anything except reading and schoolwork. On Saturdays, something happened that Maria dreaded. It was visiting day. Adults would come to St. Catherine's to meet the children. Some were social workers checking on kids they had placed there, but others were families looking to adopt. Maria always watched from her bedroom window as cars pulled up to the building. She would see well-dressed couples get out and walk toward the front door. They looked happy and excited, like they were going to buy something special. Mrs. Patterson would gather all the children in the main living room. She would tell them to comb their hair and put on their best clothes. "Remember," she would say, "be polite and answer any questions the visitors ask you. Show them how smart and well-behaved you are." The visiting families would walk around the room talking to different children. They would ask questions like, "How old are you?" and "What do you like to do?" and "How are your grades in school?" The younger children always got the most attention. Babies and toddlers were picked up and cuddled. 5- and 6-year-olds were asked to show off their reading or counting skills. But families rarely paid attention to the older children, and they almost never noticed Maria, who always sat in the back corner of the room with a book in her hands. Once, a nice couple came over to talk to her. "Hello," the woman said with a bright smile. "What is your name?" "Maria," she answered quietly. "How old are you, Maria?" 10. "And what grade are you in?" 5th grade. The man and woman looked at each other. Maria could see something change in their faces. "Oh," the woman said, "you are a little older than what we were hoping for." They moved on to talk to Lucy, who was only 6 and had big blue eyes and curly hair. Maria felt her heart sink. She was too old, too quiet, too sad, too broken. After the visitors left that day, Maria heard Mrs. Patterson talking to Miss Kelly in the hallway. "That sweet couple from today is very interested in little Lucy," Mrs. Patterson said. "That is wonderful," Miss Kelly replied. "Lucy deserves a good family." "I worry about some of the older ones, though," Mrs. Patterson continued, "especially Maria. She has been here 3 years now, and no one has shown any real interest in her. She is getting harder to place every year." "She is such a bright child," Miss Kelly said sadly. "If only she would open up more." "I think she has given up hope," Mrs. Patterson said. "And when a child gives up hope, it shows. Families can sense it. Maria stood in the doorway, listening to every word. So it was true. She was unwanted. Even the grown-ups who were supposed to take care of her thought she was hopeless. That night, Maria lay in her bed staring at the ceiling. Around her, other children slept peacefully. Some of them snored softly. Others talked in their sleep. Sarah had been adopted 2 months ago by a family with older children. Before she left, she had come to say goodbye to Maria. "I will miss you," Sarah had said. "I hope you find a family soon too." But Maria did not believe that would ever happen. She was 10 years old, and she felt like an old woman inside. She felt tired and used up, like a toy that no one wanted to play with anymore. "God," she whispered into the darkness, just like she had done 3 years ago. "I do not understand why you made me this way. Why can I not be like the other children? Why do I not know how to make friends or make families want me?" She waited for an answer, but like always, there was only silence. "Maybe Sarah was wrong," Maria continued. "Maybe you do not really love all children. Maybe you only love the easy ones, the pretty ones, the happy ones." A tear rolled down her cheek and onto her pillow. "I try to be good. I do my schoolwork. I do not cause trouble, but it does not matter. No one wants me anyway." Maria turned onto her side and looked out the window at the dark sky. Somewhere out there, other children were sleeping in real homes with real families. They had parents who loved them and would never leave them. But she would always be here in this big cold building surrounded by other forgotten children. "Please," she whispered one last time. "Please let someone want me. I promise I will be the best daughter in the world. I promise I will never ask for anything else." But even as she said the words, Maria did not really believe they would come true. Hope hurt too much. It was easier to expect nothing than to keep being disappointed. She closed her eyes and tried to dream about the magical garden from her book, where lost children always found their way home. Maria was 13 now. 3 more years had passed at St. Catherine's and nothing had changed. She was still alone. She was still unwanted. And now she was too old for most families to even consider adopting her. She had grown taller and thinner. Her dark hair was longer, and her eyes had lost any brightness they once had. She moved through each day like she was walking in a dream that never ended. On this particular morning, Maria woke up earlier than usual. She could hear Mrs. Patterson and Miss Kelly talking in the hallway outside the dormitory. Their voices sounded worried. "We need to discuss Maria's future," Mrs. Patterson was saying. "She will be 14 next month." "I know," Miss Kelly replied. "What are the options?" "Well, she could stay here until she turns 18, but honestly, she takes up a bed that could go to a younger child who has a better chance of being adopted." Maria felt her stomach twist. She quietly got out of bed and moved closer to the door so she could hear better. "There is a group home for older teens across town," Mrs. Patterson continued. "It is not as nice as here, but it might be better for her. She would learn more life skills there." "Poor child," Miss Kelly said. "She has been here so long. This is the only home she knows." "That is the problem," Mrs. Patterson said. "She has become too comfortable here. She does not even try anymore. Yesterday, when the Johnson family wanted to meet her, she barely said 10 words to them." "Can you blame her?" Miss Kelly asked. "She has been rejected so many times." "I understand, but we cannot help her if she will not help herself. I think it might be time to have that conversation with her." Maria's heart started beating very fast. They were going to send her away. Even the orphanage did not want her anymore. She quietly went back to her bed and pretended to be asleep when Mrs. Patterson came to wake everyone up for breakfast. But she could not eat anything. Her stomach felt sick, and her hands were shaking. All day long, Maria thought about what she had heard. A group home for older teens. That sounded like a place where they put children who had no hope left. Children who were too damaged to fix. After dinner, Mrs. Patterson asked Maria to come to her office. "Sit down, dear," Mrs. Patterson said kindly. "I want to talk to you about something important." Maria sat in the chair across from Mrs. Patterson's desk. She stared at her hands and waited. "Maria, You have been with us for 6 years now. You are almost 14. Do you understand what that means? It means no one will ever adopt me, Maria said quietly. Mrs. Patterson looked sad. That is not necessarily true, but it does mean we need to start thinking about your future in a different way. You want to send me away? Mrs. Patterson was surprised. How did you know that? I heard you talking this morning. Oh, Maria. Mrs. Patterson rubbed her forehead. I did not want you to find out that way. But yes, we are considering some options that might be better for you. Better for you, you mean? Maria said, looking up for the first time. I take up space that you could give to a cute little kid who might actually get adopted. That is not fair, Maria. We care about you, but you have to admit that you have not been trying very hard lately. Trying to do what? Trying to connect with families, trying to make friends, trying to be happy. Maria felt anger building up inside her chest. Happy? You want me to be happy? My mother is dead, my grandmother is dead. I have lived in this place for 6 years and no one has ever wanted me. How exactly am I supposed to be happy about that? Mrs. Patterson's voice became firmer. You are not the only child here who has lost family members. You are not the only one who has been disappointed. But look at Amy and David and the others. They have found ways to make the best of their situation. Good for them, Maria said bitterly. Maria, I know you are angry. I know you are hurt. But you cannot go through life blaming everyone else for your problems. I do not blame everyone else, I blame God. Mrs. Patterson looked shocked. Maria. It is true, Maria continued, standing up from her chair. If God loved me like everyone says he does, why did he let all of this happen? Why did he make me an orphan? Why did he make me the kind of person that no one wants to love? God has a plan for everyone, even when we cannot see it. Maria laughed, but it was not a happy sound. His plan for me is to live in institutions my whole life? His plan is for me to be alone forever? You do not know what the future holds. Yes, I do, Maria said. I know exactly what my future looks like. I will age out of the system when I turn 18. I will get some cheap apartment and some terrible job. I will be alone for the rest of my life because I do not know how to be any other way. Mrs. Patterson stood up and walked around the desk. She tried to put her hand on Maria's shoulder, but Maria stepped away. Do not touch me, Maria said. Do not pretend that you care about me when you are planning to send me away. Maria, please listen to me. But Maria was already walking toward the door. When do I have to leave? We have not made any final decisions yet. When? Maria demanded. Mrs. Patterson sighed. Next month. After your birthday. Maria nodded once and left the office. She walked straight to the dormitory, past all the other children who were watching television or doing homework. She went to her bed and pulled out the small box where she kept her few belongings. Inside the box was the torn photograph of her mother, a few clothes, and $17 she had saved from small jobs she did around the orphanage. It was everything she owned in the world. Maria looked around the room that had been her home for 6 years. It was not a good home, but it was the only home she knew. Her bed was the only bed that had ever belonged to her. This building was the only place where people knew her name, but they did not want her here anymore either. Maria made a decision that night. She would not wait for them to send her away. She would leave on her own terms. The next day was a school day, but Maria did not go to class. Instead, she waited until everyone was busy with their morning activities. Then she quietly packed her few belongings into a pillowcase and snuck out through the kitchen door. It was raining, just like it had been on the day she first arrived at St. Catherine's. Maria pulled her thin jacket tight around her body and started walking down the street. She had no plan and nowhere to go. She just knew she could not stay in a place where she was not wanted. The city looked different when you were walking through it with nowhere to go. The buildings seemed taller and more threatening. The cars moved faster. The people walking on. The sidewalks all looked like they had important places to be. Maria had been outside the orphanage many times for field trips and errands, but she had never been alone in the city before. Everything felt overwhelming and scary. By noon, she was hungry and cold. She found a small park and sat on a bench under a tree. She opened her pillowcase and counted her money again. $17. How long would that last? A police officer walked through the park, and Maria quickly got up and started walking again. She was afraid he might recognize her as a runaway and take her back to St. Catherine's. As the day went on, Maria learned things about city life that she had never known before. She learned that food cost more than she expected. She learned that people did not like it when homeless children sat in front of their stores. She learned that finding a safe place to rest was harder than finding a place to hide. When night came, Maria was exhausted and scared. She had spent most of her money on a sandwich and a soda. She was still hungry, and she had no idea where she would sleep. She found an alley behind a restaurant where there were some cardboard boxes and newspapers. It smelled bad, and she could hear rats moving around in the garbage. But it was better than sleeping on the street where anyone could see her. Maria made a bed out of the newspapers and cardboard. She used her extra clothes as a pillow and pulled her jacket over her like a blanket. Lying there in the dark, smelly alley, Maria thought about her warm bed back at St. Catherine's. She thought about the hot meals and the clean bathroom and the library full of books. But she also thought about Mrs. Patterson's plan to send her away. She thought about being unwanted and taking up space and being too difficult to place. God, she whispered into the darkness. I do not know if you are listening to me anymore. I do not know if you ever were. But if you are there, please help me figure out how to survive this. The rain started falling harder. It dripped through the fire escape above her and made puddles on the ground around her makeshift bed. I know I am angry at you, Maria continued. I know I said mean things about your plan for me, but I am just tired of being alone. I am tired of feeling like I do not matter to anyone. Thunder rolled across the sky, and Maria pulled her jacket tighter around herself. Maybe this is better, she said. Maybe being homeless is better than living somewhere where I am not wanted. At least now I am choosing to be alone. But even as she said it, Maria knew it was not true. Being alone by choice was not the same as being alone because no one wanted you. And being homeless was not freedom. It was just a different kind of prison. She closed her eyes and tried to fall asleep. But every sound made her jump. Every shadow made her afraid. She was 13 years old, and she was completely on her own in a world that did not care whether she lived or died. For the first time since her mother died, Maria cried herself to sleep. Maria had been living on the streets for 8 months now. It was winter, and the cold cut through her thin clothes like knives. She was 14 years old, but she looked older. Her face was thin and dirty. Her hair was long and tangled. Her clothes were torn and smelled bad. She had learned many things about surviving on the streets. She knew which restaurants threw away good food at the end of the day. She knew which doorways were safe to sleep in and which ones belonged to dangerous people. She knew how to stay invisible when the police came around. But she had never been this sick before. For 3 days, Maria had been coughing so hard that her chest hurt. Her head felt hot and dizzy. She could barely walk without feeling like she might fall down. But she had to keep moving. If she stayed in one place too long, someone might call the authorities. Today was worse than yesterday. Maria woke up in the doorway of a closed shop, and everything around her seemed to spin. She tried to stand up, but her legs felt like water. Need help? She whispered to herself. But there was no one to help her. She had been alone for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone care about her. Maria forced herself to walk. Each step felt impossible, but she kept going. She did not know where she was going. She just knew she had to keep moving. The snow started falling as she walked down a street she had never seen before. The flakes were big and white and beautiful, but they made her even colder. She pulled her torn jacket tighter around her body, but it did not help much. After what felt like hours, Maria saw a small church at the end of the street. It was old and made of brown stones. The windows glowed with warm yellow light from inside. Above the door there was a sign that said St. Anthony's Church. Maria had not been inside a church since she left the orphanage. She had stopped believing that God cared about her a long time ago. But right now, she just needed somewhere warm to rest. She tried to walk up the steps to the front door, but her legs gave out. She collapsed on the cold stone steps, her body shaking with fever and exhaustion. "Please," she whispered. "Please. Somebody help me." But her voice was so quiet that no one could hear her. She lay there on the steps, watching the snow fall on her face. She thought about her mother and grandmother. Maybe she would see them soon. Maybe this was how her story was supposed to end. Maria closed her eyes and felt herself drifting away from the cold and pain. She did not know how long she had been lying there when she heard footsteps. Someone was walking up the church steps. Maria tried to open her eyes, but everything was blurry. "Oh my goodness," a man's voice said. "Child, what are you doing out here?" Strong, gentle hands lifted Maria's head. She could smell coffee and soap and something that reminded her of her grandmother's house. "Can you hear me?" the man asked. "What is your name?" Maria tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. Maria. "Maria, my name is Thomas. I work here at the church. You are very sick. I am going to take you somewhere safe." Thomas was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. He was not very big, but he was strong enough to lift Maria and carry her up the steps. She was so light from not eating enough that she felt like a bird in his arms. "Do not worry," Thomas said softly. "You are safe now." He carried her through the church and up some stairs to a small apartment above the sanctuary. It was tiny but clean and warm. There was a bed, a small kitchen, and a bathroom. Books were stacked everywhere, and the walls were covered with pictures of Jesus and Mary. Thomas laid Maria on his bed and covered her with thick blankets. They felt softer than anything she had touched in months. "You have a very high fever," Thomas said, touching her forehead. "When did you last eat something?" Maria tried to remember. "Yesterday, I think. Maybe the day before." Thomas shook his head sadly. "You are just a child. Where are your parents?" "Dead," Maria whispered. "Where have you been living?" "On the streets." Thomas was quiet for a moment, then he said, "Well, you are not living on the streets anymore. Not tonight." He went to his small kitchen and made some soup. He also brought Maria a cup of tea with honey. The warm liquid felt wonderful going down her sore throat. "Drink this slowly," Thomas said. "Your stomach needs to get used to food again." As Maria sipped the soup, she looked around the tiny apartment. Everything was old but well cared for. The bed was small, but the blankets were clean and warm. There were religious books everywhere, and a wooden cross hung on the wall above the bed. "Are you a priest?" Maria asked. Thomas smiled. "No, I am just the janitor. I clean the church and help Father Miguel with whatever he needs. I have lived here for 15 years. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you needed help," Thomas said simply. "And because God put you on my doorstep for a reason." Maria felt that familiar anger rise up in her chest. "God did not put me there. I got sick and collapsed, that is all." Thomas sat down in a chair next to the bed. "Maybe. Or maybe God knew you needed someone to find you, and he made sure I was the one working late tonight. God does not care about me," Maria said bitterly. "If he did, I would not be living on the streets." "God cares about everyone," Thomas said gently, "but sometimes his ways of showing it are hard to understand." "That is what everyone always says. But I have been alone my whole life. My parents died. My grandmother died. I lived in an orphanage where no one wanted me. Now I am homeless and sick. Where is God in any of that?" Thomas was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and sad. "I do not know why bad things happen to good people," he said. "I have asked God that question many times in my own life, but I do know this. You are here now, and you are safe. Maybe that is God's answer for today." Maria wanted to argue with him, but she was too tired and weak. The soup had made her sleepy, and the warm bed felt like heaven after months of sleeping on cold ground. "Rest now," Thomas said. We can talk more tomorrow. You do not have to let me stay, Maria said quietly. I can leave in the morning. Where would you go? Maria did not have an answer. She had nowhere to go. She had no one to turn to. She was completely alone in the world. You will stay here until you are better, Thomas said firmly. I will not send a sick child back onto the streets. But this is your home, your bed. I can sleep on the couch. It will not hurt me for a few nights. Thomas started to leave the room, but Maria called out to him. Why? She asked. Why would you do this for someone you do not even know? Thomas turned back to her. His eyes were warm and kind, like her grandmother's had been. Because 20 years ago I was homeless too, he said. I was drinking too much and had lost my job and my family. I was sleeping in alleys and doorways just like you. One night I collapsed outside this very church, sick and hopeless. Maria listened with wide eyes. Father Miguel found me, Thomas continued. He was younger then and new to this church. He could have called the police or just ignored me. But instead he brought me inside. He fed me and gave me a place to sleep. When I got better, he offered me a job as the church janitor. And you have been here ever since? Ever since. Father Miguel saved my life. He showed me that God had not given up on me, even when I had given up on myself. Thomas smiled. So when I found you tonight, I knew what I had to do. Maybe this is how God works. Maybe he uses people like Father Miguel and me to help people, like you. I do not believe in God anymore, Maria said honestly. That is okay, Thomas said. He still believes in you. After Thomas left the room, Maria lay in the warm bed thinking about what he had said. She did not want to hope that things could get better. Hope hurt too much when it was taken away. But for the first time in months, she was warm and full and safe. For the first time in her life, someone had helped her without wanting anything in return. Maybe Thomas was right. Maybe this was how God worked sometimes. Not with miracles and magic, but through ordinary people who chose to be kind. Maria pulled the blankets up to her chin and closed her eyes. Outside, the snow was still falling, but she could not feel the cold anymore. She was inside, safe and cared for. God, she whispered into the darkness. I do not understand you. I am still angry at you. But if you really did send Thomas to find me tonight, then thank you. It was the first time in years that Maria had said thank you to God. It was small, but it was a start. She fell asleep listening to the wind outside and feeling grateful to be warm and alive. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, she was not alone. Tonight, someone cared whether she lived or died, and that made all the difference in the world. Maria had been staying with Thomas for 2 weeks now. Her fever was gone, and she was getting stronger every day. Thomas fed her 3 meals a day and made sure she had clean clothes to wear. He had even found some books for her to read. But Maria knew she could not stay forever. Thomas was being kind, but this was not her home. She was just a stranger he had found on the church steps. One morning, Thomas knocked on the bedroom door. Maria, there is someone I would like you to meet, he said. Who? Maria asked, feeling worried. She was afraid Thomas had called the police or social services to come get her. Father Miguel. He runs a program for young people who need help. I think you would like him. Maria did not want to meet anyone new. She was tired of adults who made promises they did not keep. But Thomas had been so kind to her that she felt she owed it to him to try. Father Miguel was younger than Maria had expected. He had dark hair and warm brown eyes. When he smiled, his whole face lit up. Hello, Maria, he said, sitting down at Thomas's small kitchen table. Thomas has told me a lot about you. What did he tell you? Maria asked suspiciously. He told me you are very smart and very brave. He also told me you have been through some hard times. Maria looked down at her hands. I suppose he wants you to take me back to an orphanage or something. Actually, no, Father Miguel said. I want to tell you about a different option. Maria looked up, curious despite herself. I run a community center a few blocks from here, Father Miguel explained. We have programs for young people who are homeless or at risk. We offer meals, tutoring, job training, and counseling. We also have a small dormitory for kids who need a safe place to stay. Like an orphanage? Not exactly. It is more like a place where young people can get back on their feet. We help them finish school, learn job skills, and plan for their future. Maria was quiet for a moment. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you could benefit from our programs, and I think you could help other kids too. Help other kids? How? Father Miguel leaned forward. Thomas tells me you love to read, and that you are very good at schoolwork. We have younger kids at the center who struggle with their homework. They could use a tutor. The idea surprised Maria. She had never thought about helping other people. She had been too focused on her own problems. I do not know, she said slowly. I am not good with people. You do not have to be perfect with people, Father Miguel said kindly. You just have to care about them, and I think you do care, even if you try to hide it. What would happen to me there? You would have your own bed in a room with one other girl. You would eat meals with the group. You would go to school during the day and help with homework tutoring in the evenings. On weekends, you could participate in other activities if you wanted to. And when I turn 18, we help you transition to independent living. We can help you find a job, get your own apartment, maybe even go to college if you want to. College. Maria had dreamed about college when she was younger, but she had given up on that dream long ago. I do not have any money, she said. We have scholarships and financial aid programs. The most important thing is that you want to build a better life for yourself. Thomas spoke up. Maria, you cannot live on the streets anymore. It is too dangerous, especially for a young woman. This could be a real chance for you to have a future. But what if I do not fit in there either? What if the other kids do not like me? Then you will deal with that when it happens, Father Miguel said. But you will never know unless you try. Maria thought about all the times she had been disappointed by adults who made promises, all the times she had hoped for something better and had her hopes crushed. But she also thought about Thomas, who had saved her life without asking for anything in return. Maybe not all adults were the same. Maybe some of them really did want to help. Can I think about it? Maria asked. Of course, Father Miguel said. Take all the time you need. After Father Miguel left, Maria sat with Thomas in his tiny kitchen. Are you trying to get rid of me? She asked. Thomas looked hurt. Maria, you know that is not true. You are welcome to stay here as long as you need to. But this apartment is not a good place for a young person to live long term. You need to be around other kids your age. You need to go to school and plan for your future. I have been taking care of myself for months, Maria said. I know you have, and that shows how strong you are. But you should not have to take care of yourself. You are still a child, even though you have had to grow up too fast. Maria was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, Do you think God wants me to go to this community center? Thomas smiled. I think God wants you to have a chance at a real life. A life where you can use your intelligence and your strength to help yourself and other people. But what if I fail? What if I cannot do it? Then you will try again. That is what life is about, Maria. Trying and failing and trying again until you succeed. I am scared, Maria admitted. Being scared is okay, Thomas said. Courage is not about not being scared. Courage is about doing the right thing even when you are scared. That night, Maria lay in Thomas's bed thinking about Father Miguel's offer. She thought about the community center and the other young people who lived there. She thought about tutoring younger kids and maybe even going to college someday. For so long, she had felt like her life was just about surviving from one day to the next. But maybe there could be more than that. Maybe she could have a real future. The next morning, Maria made her decision. I want to try it, she told Thomas. I want to go to the community center. Thomas's face broke into a huge smile. I think that is wonderful, Maria. I am proud of you for being brave enough to take this chance. Will I still be able to see you sometimes? Of course. The center is only a few blocks away. I will visit you often, and you can come here anytime you want. Father Miguel came to pick Maria up that afternoon. She packed her few belongings into the same pillowcase she had carried when she ran away from the orphanage. But this time felt different. This time, she was not running away from something, she was moving toward something. Before she left, Thomas gave her a gift. It was a small wooden cross, carved by hand. "This belonged to my mother," he said. "I want you to have it." "I cannot take this," Maria said. "It is too important." "That is exactly why I want you to have it," Thomas replied. "When you look at it, remember that God has not forgotten about you, and remember that there are people in this world who care about you." Maria hugged Thomas tightly. "Thank you for saving my life." "Thank you for letting me," Thomas said. The community center was bigger than Maria had expected. It was a converted warehouse with high ceilings and big windows. There were classrooms, a kitchen, a dining hall, and a recreation area with games and books. Father Miguel introduced her to Mrs. Elena, a volunteer teacher who helped run the tutoring program. "Welcome, Maria," Mrs. Elena said warmly. "Father Miguel tells me you are very good at reading and math." "I guess," Maria said shyly. "Well, we have some younger kids who could really use your help. Are you ready to meet them?" Maria nodded, though. Her stomach felt nervous. The first child she met was a boy named Carlos. He was 8 years old and struggled with reading. "I am stupid," Carlos said when Mrs. Elena explained that Maria would help him with homework. "You are not stupid," Maria said firmly. "Reading is hard for lots of people. You just need practice." As Maria sat with Carlos and helped him sound out difficult words, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt useful. She felt like she was good at something that mattered. Over the next few hours, Maria met more children. There was Anna, who was 10 and had trouble with math. There was David, who was 12 and could barely write a complete sentence. All of these children had stories like hers. They had lost parents or been abandoned or lived in foster homes that did not work out. They were all struggling to catch up in school while dealing with problems that most kids their age never had to face, but they were trying. They came to the community center every day after school, hoping to learn something new. They had not given up, even though life had been hard for them. "Why do you want to learn to read better?" Maria asked Carlos during their second tutoring session. "Because I want to be a teacher someday," Carlos said. "I want to help other kids like me." His answer surprised Maria. Here was a little boy who had every reason to be angry and hopeless, but instead he was dreaming about helping others. That night, as Maria lay in her new bed in her shared room, she thought about what Carlos had said. She thought about Thomas, who had been homeless and alcoholic, but had turned his life around to help others. She thought about Father Miguel, who spent his days working with kids who had been thrown away by society. Maybe this was how it worked. Maybe the people who had been through the worst things were the ones who could best help others going through similar struggles. Maybe God had not abandoned her after all. Maybe all of her pain and loneliness had been preparing her for something bigger than just surviving. "God," Maria whispered in the darkness, "I do not understand your plan yet, but if you really did save me so that I could help other kids, then I want to try. I want to be strong enough to make a difference." For the first time in her life, Maria fell asleep feeling like she had a purpose beyond just getting through each day. Maria had been living at the community center for 6 months now. She was 15 years old and finally starting to feel like she belonged somewhere. The tutoring program had become the best part of her day. Watching younger kids learn to read and solve math problems gave her a sense of purpose she had never felt before. But just when Maria was beginning to trust that good things could last, everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning in November. Maria woke up to the sound of crying. In the hallway, she got dressed quickly and went to see what was wrong. Mrs. Elena was standing outside Father Miguel's office with tears in her eyes. Several of the younger children were gathered around her, looking confused and scared. "What happened?" Maria asked. Mrs. Elena took a shaky breath. "It is Thomas," she said quietly. "He had a heart attack last night. He died in his sleep." Maria felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. "No," she whispered. "That cannot be true." "I am so sorry, Maria. I know how much he meant to you." Maria could not breathe. The walls seemed to be closing in around her. Thomas was dead. The man who had saved her life, who had shown her that people could be kind without wanting anything, in return was gone. Without saying another word, Maria turned and ran. She ran out of the community center and down the street, not caring where she was going. She just needed to get away from the pain that was crushing her chest. She ended up at the small park where she used to sit when she first lived on the streets. She collapsed on the same bench where she had once counted her last few dollars and wondered if she would survive another day. "Why?" she screamed at the empty sky. "Why do you keep taking everyone away from me?" A few people in the park looked at her strangely, but Maria did not care. Let them stare. Let them think she was crazy. She felt crazy. "I trusted you," she yelled, talking to God even though she was not sure she believed in him anymore. "I thought, maybe you really did have a plan for me. I thought maybe Thomas was right about you caring about me. But you just took him away just like everyone else." Maria cried until she had no tears left. Then she just sat on the bench, staring at nothing. She felt empty and hollow, like someone had reached inside her chest and pulled out her heart. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky, and the park filled with people and then emptied again as evening came. Maria did not move. Finally, she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up and saw Father Miguel walking toward her. "I thought I might find you here," he said gently. "Go away," Maria said. "I do not want to talk to anyone." Father Miguel sat down on the bench next to her anyway. "I know you are angry and hurt. I am angry and hurt too." "You do not understand," Maria said bitterly. "Everyone I care about dies. My mother, my grandmother, and now Thomas. God hates me." "God does not hate you, Maria. Then why does he keep taking people away from me? Why can I not have just one person who stays?" Father Miguel was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was sad but gentle. "I do not know why Thomas died," he said. "I do not know why your mother and grandmother died either. I wish I had answers for you, but I do not. Then what is the point of believing in God at all? Maybe the point is not to understand everything. Maybe the point is to keep loving people even when we know we might lose them." Maria shook her head. "It hurts too much. I cannot do it anymore." "Yes, you can," Father Miguel said firmly. "You are one of the strongest people I know." "I am not strong. I am broken. Everything about me is broken." "You are not broken, Maria. You are hurt. There is a difference." "I want to leave," Maria said suddenly. "I want to go back to living on the streets. At least then I will not have to worry about losing anyone else." "Running away will not make the pain stop," Father Miguel said. "It will just make you alone with your pain." "I am already alone." "No, you are not. You have Mrs. Elena who cares about you. You have all the children you tutor who look up to you. You have me. And you have Thomas's memory." "His memory does not help me. He is still dead." Father Miguel stood up from the bench. "Come with me," he said. "I want to show you something." Maria did not want to go anywhere, but something in Father Miguel's voice made her follow him. They walked through the darkening streets until they reached St. Anthony's Church. Father Miguel led her up the stairs to Thomas's small apartment. The door was unlocked, and everything inside looked exactly the same as it had when Maria lived there. "Look around," Father Miguel said. "Tell me what you see." Maria looked at the tiny kitchen where Thomas had made her soup when she was sick. She looked at the bed where he had let her sleep while he took the couch. She looked at the books stacked everywhere and the wooden cross on the wall. "I see his things," she said. "I see more than that," Father Miguel said. "I see evidence of a life well lived. I see books that Thomas read to learn and grow. I see a kitchen where he fed hungry people. I see a bed where he gave shelter to someone who needed it." Father Miguel picked up one of the books from Thomas's nightstand. It was a Bible, old and worn from years of reading. "Thomas left this for you," Father Miguel said, handing it to Maria. "How do you know?" "Because he told me. 2 weeks ago he came to me and said that if anything ever happened to him, he wanted you to have his Bible and this apartment." Maria stared at him in shock. What do you mean, this apartment? The church owns this building. Thomas had lived here so long that we considered it his home. In his will, he asked that you be allowed to live here when you turn 18, if you want to. Maria felt tears starting again. He did that for me? He did it because he loved you like a daughter. He did it because he wanted you to always have a safe place to come home to. Maria opened the old Bible. Inside the front cover, Thomas had written a note in his careful handwriting. Dear Maria, you saved my life just as much as I saved yours. Watching you grow and learn and care for other children has been the greatest joy of my final years. Remember that love never really dies. It just changes form. Take care of yourself and keep helping others. God has big plans for you. Thomas. Maria read the note 3 times before the words really sank in. Thomas had not just cared about her. He had loved her, and he had planned for her future even when he could not be there to see it. I do not understand, she whispered. Why would he do so much for me? Because that is what love does, Father Miguel said. Real love is not just about feeling good when someone is with you. Real love is about making sure they are okay even when you are gone. Maria sat down on Thomas's small couch and held his Bible close to her chest. She thought about all the times he had fed her and comforted her and encouraged her to be better than she thought she could be. She thought about the note he had left, telling her that she had saved his life too. She had never thought about it that way before. She had just thought he was being kind to a stranger. But maybe it was more than that. Maybe helping her had given Thomas's life meaning in his final years. Maybe their friendship had been a gift to both of them. He is really gone, Maria said, and fresh tears began to fall. Yes, Father Miguel said gently. But what he taught you is not gone. What he gave you is not gone. The love he showed you is not gone. How do I keep going without him? The same way he kept going after he lost his family and his home years ago. You remember that you are loved and you use that love to help other people. Maria looked around the tiny apartment one more time. Everything here reminded her of Thomas's kindness and generosity. This had been his sanctuary, and now he was offering it to her. The children at the center, Maria said suddenly. They are probably scared and confused about what happened to Thomas. They are, Father Miguel confirmed. They could really use someone who understands what they are going through to talk to them. I should go back, Maria said, standing up from the couch. They need me. Are you sure you are ready? Maria was not sure of anything. She still felt broken and angry and confused, but she thought about Carlos, who wanted to be a teacher, and Ana, who was finally starting to understand fractions, and David, who had written his first complete paragraph last week. They were probably feeling the same way she had felt when her mother died and her grandmother died. They were probably wondering if the adults in their lives would just keep disappearing. But she could show them that even when people died, the love they had given did not die with them. She could show them that it was possible to keep going, even when your heart was broken. I'm not ready, Maria admitted. But I think Thomas would want me to try anyway. Father Miguel smiled. I think you are right. As they walked back to the community center together, Maria clutched Thomas's Bible in her hands. She was still angry at God for taking Thomas away. She still did not understand why good people had to die, but she was beginning to understand something else. Love was not just about having people with you. Love was also about carrying the best parts of them with you even after they were gone. Thomas had taught her how to be kind without expecting anything in return. He had shown her that even broken people could find ways to help others. He had given her hope that she could have a future worth living. Those things were still true even though he was dead. Those things would always be true, as long as she remembered them and lived by them. When Maria walked back into the community center, she found the younger children sitting quietly in the recreation room. 2 years had passed since Thomas died. Maria was now 17 years old and had become the unofficial leader of the tutoring program at the community center. She was no longer the scared, angry girl who had collapsed on the church steps. She had grown into a young woman with purpose and hope. Mrs. Elena had helped Maria catch up on all the schoolwork she had missed during her time on the streets. Now Maria was not only graduating from high school, but she had been accepted to the State University with a full scholarship to study social work. "I am so proud of you," Mrs. Elena said as they looked over Maria's acceptance letter together. "You have worked so hard for this." "I could not have done it without your help," Maria replied. "You never gave up on me, even when I wanted to give up on myself." "That is what teachers do," Mrs. Elena said with a smile. "We see the potential in our students even when they cannot see it themselves." Maria thought about all the children she had helped over the past 2 years. She had watched Carlos learn to read chapter books. She had seen Anna master multiplication and division. She had helped David write essays for his high school applications. But the most important thing she had learned was that helping others had helped heal her own broken heart. Every time she saw a child succeed, every time she wiped away a younger kid's tears, every time she proved to someone that they were not alone, she felt a little more whole herself. The community center was planning a graduation party for Maria. It would be the first time anyone had ever celebrated her accomplishments. At St. Catherine's, children aged out of the system quietly and without ceremony. On the streets, survival was the only achievement that mattered. But here, people cared about her future. They wanted to celebrate how far she had come. The night before the party, Maria sat in Thomas's apartment, which she now considered her own. She had moved in when she turned 16, and Father Miguel had helped her make it feel like home. She had added some books of her own to Thomas's collection and hung pictures on the walls of all the children she had tutored. Maria opened Thomas's Bible and read the note he had left for her. She read it every time she felt discouraged or afraid. Tonight she was feeling both. "I am scared," she admitted out loud, talking to Thomas as if he could hear her. "What if I am not smart enough for college? What if I fail? What if I cannot really help people the way I want to?" Of course, Thomas did not answer. But Maria could almost hear his voice in her memory, telling her that courage was not about not being scared. Courage was about doing the right thing even when you were scared. The next day, the community center was decorated with streamers and balloons. There was a cake with "Congratulations, Maria," written in bright blue frosting. All the children she had tutored were there, along with Mrs. Elena, Father Miguel, and many of the volunteers who had become like family to her. "Before we eat cake," Father Miguel announced, "Maria has something she wants to share with everyone." Maria stood up in front of the group. A year ago, she would have been too shy to speak in front of so many people. But working with the children had taught her how to find her voice. "I want to thank all of you," she began, "for showing me what family really means. For most of my life, I thought family was just about sharing the same blood or living in the same house. But you have taught me that family is about people who choose to love you and support you no matter what." She looked around the room at all the faces that had become so dear to her. "When I first came here, I was angry and bitter and convinced that no one would ever really care about me. I had been hurt so many times that I had stopped believing in love or kindness or hope." Carlos, who was now 10 years old and reading at grade level, raised his hand. "What changed your mind?" Maria smiled at him. "You did. All of you did. When I started helping you with your homework, I realized that I had something valuable to give. I learned that even broken people can help heal other broken people." Anna, now 12 and excelling in math, spoke up. "You taught us that we are smart and that we matter. And you taught me the same thing," Maria replied. "You reminded me that I have worth, not because of what other people think of me, but because of what I can give to the world." David, who was now 14 and writing poetry, asked, "Are you going to forget about us when you go to college?" "Never," Maria said firmly. "You are part of my heart now. I am going to college so I can learn how to help even more kids like us, kids who have been thrown away by society, but who have incredible strength and potential." Mrs. Elena stood up. "Maria, would you tell everyone about your plans after college?" Maria took a deep breath. "I want to come back here and start a program for teenagers who age out of foster care. I want to help them transition to independent living and show them that they can build good lives for themselves no matter how difficult their childhoods were. Like what Thomas did for you? Carlos asked. Exactly like what Thomas did for me, Maria said. And like what all of you have done for me. You have shown me that love is not something that only lucky people get to have. Love is something we create by caring for each other. After they ate cake and opened presents, Maria walked outside to the small garden behind the community center. Father Miguel had planted it 2 years ago as a memorial to Thomas. There was a bench with a plaque that read, Thomas Martinez, a man who showed us that every life has value. Father Miguel found Maria sitting on the bench, looking thoughtful. Nervous. About tomorrow? He asked. Tomorrow was Maria's first day of college. A little, Maria admitted, but mostly excited. I feel like I am finally becoming the person I was meant to be. Thomas would be so proud of you, Father Miguel said. I think about him every day, Maria said. Sometimes I still get angry at God for taking him away, but I am beginning to understand something. What is that? Thomas's death taught me that love is not about keeping people with us forever. Love is about letting the good things they taught us live on through our actions. Father Miguel nodded. That is a very wise understanding. I used to think that God's plan for me was just suffering, Maria continued. I thought he had abandoned me to be alone and unwanted. But now I think maybe all of that pain was preparing me to help other people who are going through the same things. Do you think you have forgiven God for all the losses you experienced? Maria was quiet for a long time. I do not think forgiveness is the right word, she finally said. I still do not understand why children have to lose their parents or why good people like Thomas have to die, but I have made peace with the mystery. What do you mean? I mean I have stopped needing to understand everything in order to keep believing that life has meaning. I have chosen to focus on what I can control, how I treat other people, how I use my experiences to help others, how I honor the memory of the people who loved me. That night, Maria packed her things for college. She did not have much. Some clothes, her books, Thomas's Bible, and the wooden cross he had given her. But she felt rich in ways that had nothing to do with material possessions. She had knowledge and skills. She had people who loved her and believed in her. She had a sense of purpose that got her out of bed every morning excited to see what the day would bring. Most importantly, she had learned that her painful past did not have to define her future. She could choose to use her experiences as tools, to help others rather than weapons to hurt herself. Before she went to sleep, Maria knelt beside her bed and prayed. Her relationship with God was still complicated, but it was real and honest. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up on me even when I gave up on you. Thank you for sending people like Thomas and Father Miguel and Mrs. Elena into my life. Thank you for helping me find my purpose. She paused, thinking about all the children who were still out there, sleeping in foster homes where they did not feel wanted, living on the streets because they had nowhere else to go, sitting alone, in orphanages wondering if anyone would ever love them. Help me be strong enough to help them, she continued. Help me remember that every child deserves to feel loved and valued. Help me become the kind of person who can make a real difference in the world. As Maria drifted off to sleep, she thought about the scared 7-year-old girl who had sat crying on the steps of St. Catherine's orphanage. That little girl had believed she was unwanted and forgotten, but she had been wrong. She had never been forgotten. God had been preparing a path for her all along, a path that led through darkness and pain, but also through love and purpose and hope. Tomorrow, Maria would start college. In 4 years, she would graduate with a degree in social work. After that, she would return to the community center and start the program she had dreamed of. She would spend the rest of her life proving to other forgotten children that they were not really forgotten at all. They were just waiting for someone to show them how much they mattered. And Maria would be that someone, because she knew from experience that sometimes the most broken people are the ones best equipped to help others heal. Her story was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. 5 years had passed since Maria graduated from high school. She was now 22 years old and had just received her degree in social work from the state university. She had graduated with honors and was returning to the community center to fulfill the dream she had carried in her heart for so long. Father Miguel met her at the train station when she arrived back in the city. He looked older now, with more gray in his hair, but his smile was just as warm as ever. "Welcome home," he said, giving Maria a big hug. "It feels good to be back," Maria replied, looking around at the familiar streets. "I miss this place. The community center has not been the same without you. The children ask about you all the time." As they drove through the city, Maria noticed changes. Some neighborhoods looked better, with new businesses and freshly painted buildings. Others looked worse, with more homeless people on the streets and more boarded-up shops. "There are so many kids who need help," Maria observed, watching a group of teenagers hanging around outside a convenience store. They looked lost and aimless, just like she had felt at their age. "That is why your new program is so important," Father Miguel said. "The city has approved our proposal. You will have funding for a full transition program for young people aging out of foster care." When they arrived at the community center, Maria was amazed by how much it had grown. There was a new building next door that housed additional classrooms and a computer lab. The old building had been renovated with fresh paint and new furniture. "This is incredible," Maria said as Father Miguel showed her around. "We have had some generous donors over the years, people who believe in what we are doing here." They stopped in front of a new room with a sign on the door that read, "Maria's Place, Transition Program for Young Adults." "You named it after me?" Maria asked, feeling overwhelmed with emotion. "It was Mrs. Elena's idea. She said you were the inspiration for this whole program." Maria opened the door and looked inside. The room was set up like a combination classroom and living room, with comfortable chairs, a small kitchen area, and bookshelves filled with resources about job hunting, apartment searching, and life skills. On one wall hung a framed photograph of Thomas along with a quote, "Every person has value and potential, no matter where they come from." "He would be so proud," Maria whispered. "He is proud," Father Miguel said gently. "I believe that." The next day, Maria began her new job as the director of the transition program. Her first client was a girl named Sophia, who had just turned 18 and was aging out of the foster care system. When Sophia walked into Maria's office, Maria felt like she was looking at herself 10 years ago. Sophia was thin and pale, with dark circles under her eyes. She wore old clothes that did not fit quite right, and she kept her arms crossed defensively across her chest. "I do not know why I have to be here," Sophia said, slumping down in the chair across from Maria's desk. "I can take care of myself." "I am sure you can," Maria replied gently. "You have probably been taking care of yourself for a long time." Sophia looked surprised by Maria's response. Most adults usually lectured her about needing help. "How old were you when you went into foster care?" Maria asked. 8. My mom died, and there was no one else." Maria felt her heart squeeze with recognition. "That must have been very hard." "It was fine," Sophia said, but her voice shook a little. "I do not need anyone feeling sorry for me." "I do not feel sorry for you," Maria said honestly. "I feel proud of you." "Proud of me? Why?" "Because you survived. Because you are here, and you are still fighting. That takes incredible strength." Sophia's defensive posture softened slightly. "You do not know anything about me." "I know more than you might think," Maria said. "I was 8 years old when I became an orphan too. I spent years in an orphanage, then lived on the streets for a while, then came here to this community center. When I was your age." Sophia stared at Maria with wide eyes. "Really?" "Really. And I know what it feels like to think that no one will ever want you, that you are too broken to fix, that you have to do everything alone." "Did you ever get adopted?" "No, but I learned something better than that. I learned that family is not just about blood or adoption papers. Family is about people who choose to love you and support you, even when it is hard." Over the next few weeks, Maria worked with Sophia on practical skills like budgeting money, looking for jobs, and finding an apartment. But more importantly, she worked on helping Sophia understand that she had value and potential. "Why are you doing this?" Sophia asked one day during their session. "Why do you care what happens to me?" "Because someone cared what happened to me," Maria said simply. "A man named Thomas found me when I was sick and homeless, and he showed me kindness when I did not deserve it. A priest named Father Miguel gave me a chance to help other kids. A teacher named Mrs. Elena helped me believe I was smart enough for college. Where are they now? Thomas died a few years ago, but Father Miguel and Mrs. Elena are still here. They are part of my chosen family." Chosen family? People who love you by choice, not by obligation. People who stick with you through good times and bad times because they want to, not because they have to. Sophia was quiet for a moment. "I do not think I know how to let people love me." "It is scary," Maria admitted. "When you have been hurt and abandoned, it feels safer to keep everyone at a distance. But being alone is not really safer, it is just lonelier. What if I try to trust people and they leave me anyway? Then you will be sad for a while, but you will survive it. And you will be glad you took the risk, because the time you spent loving and being loved will have been worth it." As the months passed, Maria watched Sophia slowly open up and begin to trust. Sophia got a job at a local bookstore and found a small apartment. She started coming to the community center in the evenings to help with the younger children. One night, Maria found Sophia in the tutoring room, helping a 10-year-old boy with his reading homework. "You are good at this," Maria observed. "He reminds me of myself when I was his age," Sophia said. "I remember what it felt like to struggle with reading and have no one help me. Maybe you should think about going back to school yourself. You could study education or social work." Sophia looked skeptical. "I barely graduated high school. I am not college material." "I used to think the same thing about myself," Maria said. "But Mrs. Elena helped me see that intelligence is not about where you start. It is about your willingness to keep learning and growing." 6 months later, Sophia enrolled in community college. She was nervous but determined. Maria helped her apply for financial aid and study for her entrance exams. "I am scared I will not be smart enough," Sophia confessed the night before her first day of classes. "I felt the same way," Maria said. "But you know what I learned? Being smart is not about never making mistakes. It is about learning from your mistakes and trying again." As Maria watched Sophia walk into her first college classroom, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was why she had gone through everything she had experienced. This was why God had allowed her to suffer and struggle and survive. So she could help other young people like Sophia discover their own strength and potential. 2 years after starting the transition program, Maria received a phone call that would change everything. It was from Mrs. Patterson, the director of St. Catherine's Orphanage. "Maria, I hope you remember me," Mrs. Patterson said. "I know it has been many years since you lived here." "Of course I remember you," Maria replied, though her voice was cautious. She had not spoken to anyone from the orphanage since she ran away at 13. "I am calling because we need help," Mrs. Patterson continued. "The state is planning to close St. Catherine's next year. The building is too old and we do not have enough funding to renovate it." "I am sorry to hear that," Maria said, though she was not sure why Mrs. Patterson was telling her this. "We have 37 children currently living here. The younger ones will be placed in other facilities or foster homes. But we have 8 teenagers who are difficult to place. They are between 15 and 17 years old, and most families do not want to adopt children that age." Maria felt her heart racing. She knew exactly what would happen to those teenagers. They would be shuffled from one temporary placement to another until they aged out of the system. They would end up on the streets just like she had. "What are you asking me to do?" Maria said. "I heard about your transition program," Mrs. Patterson said. "I was wondering if you might consider expanding it to include younger teens. These 8 children need someone who understands what they are going through." Maria closed her eyes and saw herself at 13, angry and hopeless, running away into a storm because she felt unwanted everywhere she went. "Can I meet them?" Maria asked. "Of course, would you be able to come here tomorrow?" The next day, Maria walked up the familiar stone steps of St. Catherine's orphanage. Nothing had changed. The building still looked old and imposing. The yellow paint was still peeling in the same places. Mrs. Patterson met her at the door. She looked much older now, with white hair and deep lines around her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know this place holds difficult memories for you." "It does," Maria admitted. "But it was also my home for 6 years. It was where I learned to read, and where I first discovered that I was good at helping other children with their schoolwork.